Hello, so today's podcast is about the Queen and apparently her anger at how our politicians are handling Brexit. I mean, I guess I should be happy that she's finally waking up to what's happening, and um, I'm glad to see that our Queen is giving her opinion on this. Maybe now they'll take this Brexit nonsense seriously. So I'll read the article and then I'll give you kind of my thoughts on it. So here we go. Furious Queen is, quote, dismayed at her politicians' inability to govern correctly. Well, things are wrong when the Queen is, getting on the scene of this whole Brexit. The 93-year-old Queen was, quote, really dismayed and unhappy with the quality of Britain's political class amid Brexit chaos, believing it is unable to govern correctly, it is claimed. So we don't know if the Queen is actually saying this. I mean, somebody at the, where is this from, at the Mirror, is saying that the Queen has said this, so we don't know for sure if the Queen is saying this from her own mouth. But honestly, I wouldn't blame her if she was saying it from herself, because think about it. It's been what, 2 years, 3 years since we've decided to leave Europe, and we're nowhere near leaving. I mean, I voted to remain, but that's a video for another time. So just carrying on reading the article to you. The Queen has said that she is disappointed in Britain's political leaders and their inability to govern correctly, it is claimed. That's the bit I've already read, sorry about that. The 93-year-old monarch is said to have privately expressed frustration with the political class in an exchange overheard at an event shortly after Britain voted to leave the EU and David Cameron resigned as Prime Minister. So she's had this opinion since we voted to leave back in 2016. Interesting. I'm a little bit, concerned and a bit unhappy that she's only now decided to say something, but then again, I'm glad that she is coming out and saying this. A royal source claims the Queen was, quote, really dismayed over the situation, and she was really unhappy with how the politicians are handling the Brexit chaos. It is a chaos, yeah, absolutely. Her frustration keeps growing because MPs are now threatening to drag her into Brexit and the UK moving closer to a no deal under new Prime Minister Boris Johnson. So I'm guessing her main issue is that she's involved in this. She just kind of wants to be left alone, and I don't blame her. It's such a mess. If I was in her shoes, I would want to stay well away from this as well. Again, the source keeps mentioning that she is dismayed, so things must be really bad. I've heard her talking about her disappointment in the current political class and its inability to govern correctly. So all the sources are saying that, she is very unhappy, she doesn't think the government is doing a good job, and I'm really glad the Queen is saying this, if this is true, because it just says that it's claimed that she is saying this. But Boris Johnson's government has really got to fix up if the Queen is coming after you now. I bet the Queen doesn't even like Tories. I bet she voted Labour or some other party, but hey, anyone can guess. So I'll just look at it if there's anything else worth reading out to you, and then I'll get back to you. So please hold on. The Queen has generally stayed out of the political affairs of the state and is known for being strictly neutral during her reign. So that means that, she doesn't have an allegiance to any particular party. She is neutral. And that's the way it should be. The monarchy, the royal family, they shouldn't be involved in politics anyway. But I think now, she feels like she has to say something. She feels like she has to get involved to make the government listen and make a decision that's beneficial to the entire country, not just to the few rich people. She rarely exposes her views, and this is said to be among the starkest political statements she is known to have made, coming as a surprise to courtiers. Well, I think, everyone's got an opinion about Brexit and, how it should happen, and because it affects the entire UK, I think the Queen feels like she has to be involved, and you never know, she might end up taking the reins of Brexit and saying, step aside, Boris Johnson, you're clearly not doing a decent job. Let me go and talk to the EU and see if we can come up with a deal. Maybe that might happen. I don't know if it will, but I'm hoping that it does. If I sound chesty or out of breath, I am asthmatic, and I've just taken my puffs, but I'm soldiering through this video because I want to get this out to you guys. That's how committed I am. Buckingham Palace has declined to comment on the claims. So maybe this is not true, but I think it is. Maybe they just don't want to, confirm. Maybe the Queen realised that she doesn't want to get too involved with the media. But regardless, she is allowed to have an opinion. She is a human being after all. So, whether she said that Brexit is a good thing or a bad thing, or the government doesn't do their job properly, that's her opinion and her opinion alone. Oops. I've lost the story. Sorry about that. I'll be with you shortly, guys. It's Eid today or tomorrow. When did you guys do Eid? Did you do it today? Are you doing it today? Depending on your time zone. Are you doing it tomorrow? Anyway, Eid Mubarak, guys. I hope you have or had a nice day. The story also claims that the Queen is exacerbated. Wow. Things must be really bad. So these claims came after Tory rebels and Labour MPs plot to call on the Queen to intervene if Mr. Boris Johnson... I keep losing the story. I do apologise. By the way, Virgin Media Wi-Fi isn't the best Wi-Fi out there. I do recommend BT or other... This is not a plug for BT, by the way. They're not paying me to say this, but I am moving to them pretty soon. I also like TalkTalk. Again, not doing a plug for TalkTalk, just saying. Although if you broadband people do want to pay me, I wouldn't mind. Yes, so where was I? Yes, the claims emerged as Tory rebels and Labour MPs plot to call on the Queen to intervene if Mr. Johnson refuses to quit in the wake of a Commons no confidence vote. So this is saying that, if Boris Johnson doesn't step aside, then the Queen must get involved and, sort of do this herself, I guess. Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell suggested last week that he would respond by sending Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn to Buckingham Palace, quote, in a cab to tell the Queen his party was prepared to assume power. Does this mean that they're going to take power by force? Not without a general election, you can't. We the public need to have a say. He said he would prefer not to drag the Queen into it. Yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. Mr. Boris has reportedly agreed to meet Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar to discuss Brexit and the Northern Irish backstop. If I've butchered that name, Leo Varadkar, please accept my apologies. The Sunday Telegraph reported the UK has accepted Varadkar's offer to meet and dates are being discussed. So we don't know when they'll meet, but I'll probably do a video explaining that if the story comes out. Mr. Johnson has told the European Union there is no point in new talks on a withdrawal agreement unless negotiators are willing to drop the backstop agreed by his predecessor, Theresa May. So I guess, the European Union wants to keep in Northern Ireland into the EU, but the UK wants to leave as a whole. So I think that's what's causing the biggest problems. There might be other underlying issues that are going on there, but everyone seems to be just talking about the Irish backstop, which is the main problem that they have right now. The EU has said that it is not prepared to reopen the divorce deal it agreed with Mrs. May, which includes the backstop, an insurance policy to prevent the return to a hard border between the British province of Northern Ireland and EU member Ireland. Yeah, that makes sense. So, Northern Ireland and Ireland, you don't want them to get into an argument of their own over Brexit. That's just not right for the people. That's not right for their trade agreements and their people going in and out of Ireland to Northern Ireland. Mrs. May's agreement, rejected 3 times by the British Parliament, says the United Kingdom will remain in a customs union, quote, unless and until alternative arrangements are found to avoid a hard border. Mr. Johnson has said Britain will leave the EU on October 31st with or without a deal. I've already made a video on my thoughts on a no-deal Brexit. I will link it in the description below and you can have a look at that video and why I think that's a bad idea to leave without a deal. I hope we don't leave without a deal, but it is looking more and more likely that will happen. Mr. Johnson stepped up preparations to leave without a divorce agreement if Brussels refuses to renegotiate, prompting some lawmakers to suspect a no-deal Brexit is his goal. So here Mr. Johnson is just saying, you know what, guys? Whatever happens, we're leaving on October 31st. Whether you give us a deal, whether you don't give us a deal. He doesn't care what happens to the country. He's a rich guy, and his rich buddies, they'll be okay. They've got the money, regardless of whatever deal takes place, regardless of how high inflation goes, they're okay. They're going to be okay. It's going to be you and I that are going to struggle, so there are petitions going around online to stop a no-deal Brexit, and I highly recommend you Google them and sign if you truly believe that leaving without a deal is bad. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you're happy. That's fine as well. The Telegraph said it was hoped a meeting between Mr. Johnson and Varadkar could take place before the G7 summit in France later in August. Meanwhile, former Labour Prime Minister Gordon Brown has said that the UK, having previously been admired around the world for being inclusive and outward-looking, now presents a picture of division, intolerance and introversion. Yeah, I kind of agree with Gordon Brown there, because racism has gone on the rise ever since we voted for Brexit. We're already seeing EU citizens leaving the UK because they said that they don't feel welcome anymore. And, maybe more and more people will end up leaving the UK. I don't know, maybe you might see Asian people leave next. The UK was once a place where everybody wanted to come into because they all felt welcome. It was the world of, the UK was considered the world of opportunities. And it still is to some extent. I'm not saying, the UK has gone completely bad. But Brexit hasn't helped matters. Brexit has shown people that we can be racist if need be, if that makes any sense. I think people look at Brexit as a win for racist people, but that's not the case. There are genuine people who did vote for Brexit who are not racist. Some people were promised an extra £350 million a week for the NHS. I don't know if anyone still remembers that. That would have been one of my reasons for voting for Brexit had I voted Brexit. But I did vote Remain. In an opinion column for The Observer, Mr. Brown wrote that 3 weeks into Mr. Johnson's premiership, quote, England nationalism is on the rise. The Conservative and Unionist Party has been reincarnated as the Conservative and Brexit Party, and unionism appears to be sleepwalking into oblivion. He finished by saying that the ideals of an inclusive, outward-looking Britishness could, quote, could not survive the divisiveness and chaos of a no-deal Brexit. To prevent the rise of dysfunctional nationalism, Mr. Brown said, quote, the first step is to stop no deal in its tracks. So there you have it, guys. Nobody wants a no deal because the country will plummet into chaos. Prices will go up, inflation will go up as well. They're kind of linked together. And I just think, we should do our best to stop a no deal Brexit. I mentioned in my previous video that I will link in the description that I don't think a general election is the answer here. I do think a people's vote is the answer. I do think that the people that are going to have to live with the consequences should get a say in what happens. So the article finished. And that was just me giving you my thoughts on the last paragraph. So in terms of the Queen then, again, this article just says that it is claimed that she is saying these things. But as I've said, she is a human being, she is allowed an opinion. And I think she is going to suffer as well if a no deal takes place. And, she would rather have a government that knows what they're doing and, can get the job done in the best interest of the British people. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that the Queen should do more? Do you think she should get involved a bit more? Do you think she should have a final say in Brexit? Do you think the government should, every time they have a discussion with Brussels, should they get the Queen involved? I think that might be a solution. So the Queen should be there to keep this particular government in check, make sure they don't do anything that might go against British values. So let me know what you guys think, and I will see you with another podcast. Take care. Bye-bye.